Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Shop Talk. This is not Dave. I know, it probably takes you by surprise, but this is Byron. He's a friend of mine. How you doing, Byron?
Hi, what's up, Tim?
Not too much, man. So today I brought Byron on the show because I want to talk about a couple of things. Double action automatic handguns versus striker fire. And also I want to talk about the Sphinx that's being imported by Chris, which is a Swiss-made handgun that is heavily influenced, I won't say it's a copy of, but heavily influenced by the CZ75 series of pistols, or the CZ series of pistols. So when I first met Byron and I have known each other for many years. When I first met Byron, show everybody what you were carrying.
I've been carrying this SP01 Shadow.
That is a chunk of steel. That's a big handgun. You open carried that bad boy. It's a all steel handgun, upper and lower. It's a double action, single action handgun.
Yep.
And when you were carrying it, you didn't have the threaded barrel on it. It was just a standard barrel, correct?
Right.
So when I met you, that's what you were carrying. And like I said, you're carrying it outside 3 o'clock position, if I recall correctly. And you transitioned over to the Sphinx, which is the pistol I just showed you guys. Now, first of all, let's talk about double action. What is it about double action that you like? Is it something that you just was it your first handgun, a double action? You just kind of carried on with it? Or is there something about the double action you prefer?
No, I actually started with Glocks. All the pistols started as Glocks. And as I transitioned through the Wonder 9s, I've worked my way through almost all of them, I think. I needed something that was ergonomic. And the only thing that's giving me a high ride beaver tail, realistically, is giving me a hammer as well. So that led me into the CZs for the ergonomics, and it's a training thing. So I don't mind shooting, so I'll train with that double action all day if I have to.
So it's interesting, you pointed out the hammer, the external hammer that the CZs are known for. Why is it that you prefer that, the external hammer versus a striker?
So for me, it's a reholstering issue, especially now that I appendix carry. Anytime I'm reholstering, I'm actually going to cover the hammer with my thumb and ride that down into the holster. If there's something caught in your holster, in your gear, anything in the way that's gonna snag, I can know as I'm reholstering that pistol that there's something that's slowly creeping back on that trigger for me.
So what he's talking about, guys, is you have a hammer here, and if anything's pushing on that trigger that would cause a discharge, if your thumb's there, when that trigger gets pushed, you're gonna get immediate feedback.
Right, it's an extra layer. It's an extra layer that doesn't take any extra time either.
That's interesting. I carry a VP9, which all you guys know, and it's a striker fired pistol. I do the same thing though. When I go to reholster, I like, obviously, I'll look at my appendix holster because I carry appendix holster. I guess we could have a discussion about that. That's a separate topic. But when I go to reholster, I look. Right now, I know a lot of trainers say, never look at your holster. Matter of fact, I've seen some of my followers say when they see me reholstering, you're looking at your holster as if it's a bad thing. We've had this discussion. When the fight's over, I'm not putting my gun away if I think I'm being threatened, right?
Right, absolutely. We're fast into a gunfight and slow back into the holster, slow out of the gunfight. So once you're finally done, you can check out that holster because you've done your scan, assess, and checked out everything going on around you.
So threat level very low. Now you're putting your gun away. I will look at my holster because I too carry appendix. Now, when I put my thumb up like this, a couple of reasons for that. First of all, when I load my weapon, I'll look at it, but I'll also, out of habit, hit the back of the slide, make sure it's seated. Now, with striker-fired handguns, when you're putting guns into tight-fitting holsters, a little bit of pressure can push that slide back. All it takes is about 1/8 of an inch of travel. Yep. And a modern automatic pistol that's based on the Browning action will hit its disconnector and the gun becomes inoperable.
Yep.
So when I'm seating the gun in the holster, I'm pushing forward on the slide as well to make sure that I'm not taking the gun out of battery and tripping that disconnect.
Right.
So that's interesting. I never thought of that, and that's an interesting point. So you went from the 3 o'clock position, all steel handgun, full-size handgun, to the Sphinx, which is an abbreviated handgun in that it's more or less designed for concealed carry, has a slightly shorter barrel, a little bit off the grip, 15-round magazine. I will say, though, that even though it's a smaller handgun, it's not considered a full-size handgun, I still am able to get a full grip on the thing. I can get my pinky, even with the magazine out of it, my pinky has plenty of grip there. I'm not dangling the pinky off, so it feels like a full-size handgun. Like you said, you have that beaver tail that sets deep in the hand, so you have an index point. It does feel good. I like it. For a short time there, I was actually considering going to a double action myself for a couple of different reasons. I guess I can talk about that a little bit later. I've talked about it in video once before. But I ultimately wound up going with the VP9. When I was right in the middle of making my decision, I wound up going to the VP9. One of the big issues was the size of the trigger guard because of a gloved hand.
Right.
I took my 19 out to the range. I guess I will get into this now. I had bought some new gloves. We had a really cold winter. I went to draw my pistol for the first time with the gloves on, tried to get my finger in the trigger guard, and I was pushing on the trigger to get my finger in with the gloves. I'm like, uh-oh, problem. Thicker gloves, something I hadn't trained with, first time to the range with them. I liked the gloves. I'm like, man, this is something I need to take into consideration. So it made me think about going to double action. And one other reason was my kids at the time had young kids in the house. Loaded guns always on me, but we all make mistakes. If maybe the kids are out with the wife, I think they're out of town, away, whatever. I may jump in the shower, lay the gun on the bed, mistake, but it can be made. Kids come home, I'm in the shower thinking they're out of town, picks gun up, pulls the trigger, bang. And I always thought maybe that would be an extra tier of security with kids in the house, with maybe having that double action, something I was thinking about.
Just a mechanical inability to reach it.
Right. Their hands can't physically
least
reach it. The dexterity and the strength isn't there yet.
Right.
And I was thinking I was buying myself time until they're old enough to understand and actually taught something to understand and actually learn that they don't touch guns. At 3 years old, I don't care how bright your kid is. At 3 years old, there's that curiosity thing, and they may actually pick up a gun and pull the trigger. Totally different discussion. So anyway, you transitioned over to the Sphinx. Now there's a couple of distinct differences between the CZ series of pistols and the Sphinx. Even though they look very similar, they operate very similarly, they're two drastically different guns. The CZ being all steel, the Sphinx being steel, aluminum, and polymer. A lot of people don't even believe that when I tell them that.
Right, and it changes the balance of the gun, and it really makes it manageable. The CZ, as I went throughout the day, the gun got heavy, and it got cumbersome to carry. No matter what belt I tried, new Kydex, more stiff belt, less stiff belt, wider belt, if the gun is still heavy, and you're not losing that weight. So I had to move over to something that was lighter, and even in a more compact frame. Because if I got a more compact frame, but I still got my accuracy, I don't necessarily care how small it is. If I can get all the accuracy and ergonomics I need out of a smaller frame, then I'll take it. So I took a little bit of size, took it down, and then this also is so much lighter because of the polymer grip, which really, it's tacky, it's nice to grab, and you can get on it quickly.
Yeah, the other thing is here's the kit that the Sphinx comes in, guys. And inside, you're gonna find the pistol spare magazines, cleaning kit, but these grips that are replaceable, so you can change the grip, which isn't unique to the Sphinx. A lot of modern automatics offer that, but it does come as part of the kit with the gun. Now let's talk a little bit about the price. Now the CZ is a popular handgun. It is popular in the civilian world. Historically speaking, it was popular in the military circles. All steel, mass-produced, painted finish, good quality, practical quality, but the Sphinx takes it a step further. Now we're talking about fine Swiss watches versus maybe a Seiko watch, right? If we draw a comparison.
And the big thing here is the Shadow is a fantastic pistol, and it's a step above from this tactical in fit and finish.
He's making fun of my handgun, folks.
But the difference between the Shadow and the Sphinx was night and day. Yeah. I mean, completely different. And for them to consider this a production handgun, for the tolerances that they're using, I mean, this is a $3,000 pistol on the American market, what they're going to charge for these kind of tolerances. So it's excellent to see it out of a pistol that's essentially buyable. It's not a $3,500 Ed Brown.
Another dig on me.
but it is great to get a very well-made pistol under an astronomical amount.
Right. So you're probably looking at about $1,000. I mean, what did you pay for yours? You bought yours?
I mean, you can find them for different prices.
$1,100 or
yeah,
something.
Right around there.
So about almost, not quite twice the cost of a comparable CZ product. Right, CZ is right around $600 price point.
Right, it is, unless you're buying in the Shadow. So for me,
it's way up in price.
Right. That goes way up in price and availability as well. Which is real quick one of the reasons I bought this Sphinx right now, because as scary as it is, our current political climate, a stroke of a pen, this disappears.
Yeah.
A stroke of a pen, it absolutely disappears.
And it's also interesting to note what prompted this discussion was Byron has a training company called Infinity Solutions, so he does training, and one of the training sessions he was firing from inside of a car, a picture was taken, and that picture was picked up by the guys over at Chris who import the Sphinx, and it wound up on their Facebook page. I follow Byron, and I also follow Chris, and I saw this come across my feed, and I'm like, holy cow, that was the first time I learned that you had switched handguns.
Right.
And so I got a hold of you and said, hey man, let's make a video, talk about double action, talk about the Sphinx. So this is my pistol. This is one you've seen in videos before, and that's Byron's actual carry gun.
Mine's quite a bit more beat up, but I shoot
don't
my
carry
stuff,
mine.
so I shoot my stuff.
I collect stuff, right?
Right.
And I actually shoot my VP9 pretty much every week, but it's held up nicely too. Might as well point that out. I mean, just taking a look at the wear on it.
The finish is still doing really well, and it's been in and out of the holster thousands of times, and it's been shot. I don't know. I've probably put 4,000, 5,000 rounds in the 6 months I've had it through it. So it's held up really well. It looks fantastic. It's hot and dirty right now because we just got off range.
Yeah.
So, but it's held up incredibly well, and that's not something I can say the same for some of the other comparable pistols I'm buying.
And you carried around in Kydex, right? So,
Right, in
Kydex can
Kydex.
be hard on finishes.
Appendix carry, and I'm sweating on it and the whole bit, and it's held up
Which
really
is kind of
well.
nice because the part that's actually touching the body is either aluminum, which is a hard anodized type 3, I believe, and then you have polymer. And so most of the part of the gun, if you don't have a sweat guard that's touching your body, is polymer, and there's zero chance it's going to corrode.
Right, not an issue at all.
In case you guys don't know, we secrete salt. Our sweat is loaded with salt. One of the most corrosive substances known to man is salt. So we basically secrete acid. It's very hard on guns. So it's really nice that the polymer part of the gun is actually the part that touches your body the most. Now, one thing I have noticed, Byron, and you know, we haven't discussed this, but taking a look at the sights on the gun that come with it, it's more of a Novak style swept concealed carry sight, so when you're putting it in, you're not going to snag on anything. Conversely, I went to different sights on my VP9 so I could have that shelf, so I can run the gun off my belt or off a pocket or something like that. Is that something you've thought about? Is it something you may change in the future? I mean, what are sights?
Well, and what's interesting is it comes down to pressure. You almost don't even need. I mean, you absolutely, it is helpful to have the shelf, but a lot of it is just pressure coming off. So it's not the fact that there's a shelf there as much as it is that there's pressure that's happening on the top of the slide. Because how much do you have to move it?
Not much.
Quarter inch?
Yeah.
I mean, really, you just got to get the tension off the slide release to get that slide to rock
Unless
forward.
you have to completely run the slide.
Right.
Like, you know, you're doing a single-handed malfunction drill, clearing drill, right?
Right.
Then you have to do
But
apply a lot of pressure
even
to
there,
accomplish it.
even there, you know, I can still work it on the side of the table, and it's not an issue. Obviously, I'm not nice to my guns, so.
Me either. People get riled up when they see me taking but collectible AKs and throwing them in the dirt.
These are tools, not toys, though.
Exactly.
So.
Yeah, I agree with you there. And that brings up actually another good point. When Byron and I first met, he brought up Ed Brown. I was carrying an Ed Brown 1911. It wasn't my all-the-time carry gun, but if I was going out, we're going to dinner, or we're in public, I would carry an Ed Brown, especially in the winter if you had like a suit and
And this
jacket
was
type thing
generally
on.
when you left your purse at home. You'd accessorize
I would leave my
with a
purse
pistol.
home, the pumps,
right,
you know, I was doing
accessorize with
flats.
a pistol.
Yeah,
right.
And so I would accessorize with the pistol. So I was carrying that Brown, and I actually had this epiphany. I'm like, you know, what happens if I actually get into a shooting? What happens if I actually drop the pistol in a fight? You know, $3,500 for that gun is a lot of money to me. I'm not a man of good, you know, wealthy means. I mean, I've earned a good living in my life, but you know, certainly not enough where I can throw away $3,500 guns. So if my gun goes into lockup because of a shooting, or perhaps gets lost, dropped, whatever. If I went to a training class with my Ed Brown and they said, pull the gun out and drop it on the ground in front of you, I'm like, I'm out. I wouldn't do it. So that tells me right there that was a wrong carry choice for me.
Right, and that crosses that barrier into a toy.
Right,
you know, so.
right. It was more of a fashion statement than it was a practical tool, and I quickly realized that, and I stopped carrying it altogether. Typically, for many years, I carried a Glock for that reason. To me, it was a disposable handgun. If I lost it, you know, I wouldn't be crushed because I had 3 more in the safe.
Right.
Now the Sphinx is, you know, $500 more than a Glock, a decent Glock. So I mean, you're I guess really cost is a subjective thing.
Yeah.
And so it depends on how much you make, how much you're willing to spend, and you're treating your $1,000 handgun like I treat a Glock. So obviously it's not a hang-up or an issue for you. So you're in the right price range for your carry.
Right, and it comes down to what tasks are you going to have for it to complete. In my tasks, it has to be ergonomically sound. You have massive hands. I have massive hands. And the big thing here is when I'm coming up, I know I can get a very high ride on that beaver tail, and I can bring it out without an issue. Glocks, I will rub my hand raw. I mean, I will absolutely eat my hand raw. And I also, this lends itself to running it as a shelf for your shooting thumb. And on that VP9, I rock that slide forward every time because I ride the slide release.
The biggest complaint I have about the VP9 is the location of the slide release, or slide stop. I mean, some folks will have an argument saying you can't use a slide release as a slide stop. It's a multifunction tool. You most certainly can. But I actually ride that with my thumb. It took a lot of practice to get a grip where the gun actually lock open on last shot fired.
And my thumb finds it. That's the first thing it does.
With this, look how far forward that is. I have to reach for the slide release. I have to reach to engage it. I have to reach to release it, which I actually prefer. as you're talking about, because I'm not going to accidentally, in the heat of a fight, keep my gun from locking open, where I go click, dang it, and then I have to, I'm forced to
interesting,
reload.
On range, you know, the harder you're pushing that mag in, the slide rocked itself forward all by itself.
It's not uncommon. I see it with Glocks. I can do it with the VP9. I can hit the VP9 hard enough on the bottom, where it'll drop the slide. So that's a common thing with a lot of automatics.
Right, absolutely.
And sometimes people think their gun's broken.
No,
because when you get amped up and you're under stress, you're hitting stuff, you're yanking stuff.
And that's a bonus. You just eliminated a step.
Right.
So,
but it could also make you go, what just happened, and cause a pause if you don't practice. You're not used to having it happen.
Right, absolutely.
So that's interesting. You know, I personally went the striker fired route. I have no aversion to the double action autos. I'm an old guy. I always point that out. The Wonder Nines, which I thought was an interesting phrase that you used, that's an old man phrase, because that's what we called them in the 80s. You know, for the longest time, Browning High Powers 1911s were the automatics. Police still carried revolvers when I was a kid, right? And so the Wonder Nines came out, and the police were just starting to transition to them, and every single gun on the market, probably the most popular would have been CZs of the era. I remember, this is a cool historical note, the CZ75 is the only gun that, oh my gosh, why can't I think of his name?
Cooper?
Jeff Cooper, right, thank you. How could I forget? In the endnotes of Guns and Ammo, Cooper's Corner, Cooper was a 1911 fanatic.
Right.
The only gun that wasn't a 1911 that he sang the praises of was the CZ75
But they're
pistol.
so similar, you just eliminate the beaver tail safety. I mean, they're incredibly similar, and you can do it in a 9mm package, which is really, you know, the direction everyone's going in self-defense now.
But they are throwback. They are Wonder Nines. The striker fired kind of are the next evolution of the Wonder Nine without the double action. So how about, you know, one of the things I always see people talking about is second strike capability. Do you value that at all? So, like, in my mind, I'll just tell you what I think. So, gun goes click, doesn't go bang. I immediately do remedial action. Immediate action. I tap rack and get another round in there. I'm not going to give that round a second chance.
Right.
Some folks carry double actions because they say, oh, well, I can just pull the trigger again. If it's already demonstrated to me once it's not going to work, I'm not going to hope it's going to work the second time and waste time pulling the trigger. I'm just going to do a malfunction clearing drill. How about you? I mean, do you value the second strike?
So I avoid using cheap ammo. If you shoot a lot of cheap ammo, there's a lot of value there because you can try that round again. But I don't shoot cheap ammo for the reason that each rep you burn is a good rep or a bad rep, and I don't want to burn any bad reps with bad ammo. So I spent $1,000 on a pistol.
Yeah,
I'm not going to spend
a buck around. For
I'm not gonna spend really cheap on.
But if your gun does
ammo.
go click, are you going to pull the trigger again, or are you going to clear it?
I'm going to clear it.
Okay.
I'm just going to run through because that round has told me I can't trust it.
That's where I'm at too. I don't buy into the second strike thing. I know a lot of people that carry double actions. That's the primary reason they always talk about that second strike. I don't place any value on that. Well, that's really interesting. So we've both kind of transitioned. I went from the Glock 19 to the VP9, staying within the striker family. You went from the Shadow to the Sphinx. Apparently, and we were out on the range. You shoot the thing very well. It conceals much better, I must say.
Yes.
You actually pull the shirt over it; it's gone.
Right.
Right. So now you went from open carry, which you used to do quite a bit. You made a tactical decision to go to appendix style, more concealed.
And part of it too was just being able to get in and out of cars. So I started running these classes in cars, fighting over the gun, and it led me to more of a bring the firearms center line. I'm faster out of an appendix carry holster than I am at the 3 o'clock, just because of the economy of motion, and getting handguns caught on car doors and seat belts and all these different things. In appendix carry, it is really a part of my person. It's really on my person, and it's not something I have to worry about snagging on something on my way in or out.
And that's an interesting point, and we'll touch upon it briefly. I also carry appendix style. Another YouTuber, Yankee Marshall, recently did a video where he basically crucified anybody that even attempted it. He thinks it's foolish, and why shoot yourself in the burrito or whatever. He's a funny guy.
Well, you're not a sharpshooter, so you wouldn't, right?
Oh boy. Anyway, so I used to be like him. I used to think appendix style carry was crazy because there's, most of the people have negligent discharges either on the draw or on the reholstering. Either one of those are bad when it's pointed at that particular region of the body.
Right.
You have experience in the medical field. I mean, what happens if you get hit in the artery that runs down your leg, commonly known as the femoral artery?
Even if you have the medical equipment at hand, it's incredibly difficult getting a tourniquet that high on you, cranking it down, and getting the blood flow stopped, because it is going to be in the pelvic girdle region, which anymore that's where we're leading it, because they're almost untreatable. On scene, they're untreatable. You need to be to a vascular surgeon, and unless you're 2 minutes from a vascular surgeon, you're dead. You're going to bleed out and die.
Right. And so if you get hit in that major artery that runs right down both legs, you are done. And you can dial 911. You can apply as much pressure as you want. you're bleeding out.
Right,
And
because you're amped up, your heart's beating faster, and that
Right.
blood is pumping faster out of you now.
you're done. So there is a downside. So if you do carry appendix style, there are certain upsides to it. I mean, what's the upside to possibly accidentally killing yourself? Practice. Make sure that I've never had an ND where I've been in training. I'm very careful about where my trigger finger is. So when I come out of the holster, my finger doesn't go to the trigger until it's pointed well away from my body. When I reholster, I look at the holster. We were talking about that. I mean, no more threat. I'm making sure that gun has a clear pathway back into its holster. I also like appendix carry because I used to carry at the 4 o'clock position behind the hip. I realized, and we live in a nice area, but we are bordered by really bad areas. Google Gary, Indiana, if you want to know what's nearby us, and it's a crime capital here in the United States. So we do have bad elements that come through, and probably one of the things that we face most as a threat would be a carjacking. And getting a pistol out from the 4 o'clock position with a seatbelt on is difficult. And as we were talking about, just by leaning forward and hitting the seatbelt and leaning forward, you're telling a potential attacker that you're going for a gun. With the appendix style, it's more casual. You can get the gun out and ready. I also like it for the reasons I have my VP9 here. So when I go to school, it's actually a felony to go into a school with a firearm. So I obey the law. When I take my kids to school, I have to walk them inside. I can sit in the parking lot of the school where I'm still okay. I can reach down with the particular holster I have, take my pistol out. Parents around me have no idea I'm taking a gun out. I leave it in the holster, trigger's covered, and I can just discreetly slip it into the center console. Walk my son into school, come back out, grab my pistol. I can look around. Nobody knows what I'm doing. Gun's back where it belongs, and nobody's the wiser. So I too have adopted the appendix style of carry. Yes, there are downsides, pretty big downsides, but the solution to that is training, being confident with your weapon, and just simply not making that mistake. There's so many upsides. I've opted myself to go.
Right, and the great thing about all those training possibilities, train with your gun, most of this is dry fire.
Yeah.
And dry fire training for proper reholstering is free.
Right.
Completely free. As long as you own the pistol and you own the holster, this is free training. So work it. You're watching a movie,
Practice.
work it. Practice.
Sit on the couch, draw.
Yeah,
That's what I do.
And do it properly every single time, and eventually that'll just become something that comes second nature that you won't have to think about doing it.
Right. But I don't recommend you go out and try appendix carry. I do highly recommend getting instruction and lots of practice. It is a very dangerous way to carry a handgun potentially, and it's not something you want to do if you're not well rehearsed or well practiced in doing it.
Or without a quality holster. If your holster collapses in on itself in appendix carry, this is not
Bad
a proper
decision.
appendix carry holster.
Get
'Cause you
Kydex,
shouldn't-
mouth
Yeah,
stays
get
open.
Kydex. A lot of the really high quality plastics out there aren't going to fold in on themselves because you don't need to be manipulating a holster as you're trying to reholster it. That's a mistake.
I mean, if that's all I had, I would literally take the holster off and put the gun back in, and then put the holster with the gun with the trigger covered, because that is a dangerous situation.
Right.
Well, Byron, we've kind of got off into the weeds. Thank you for sharing your thoughts on the double action, the CZ versus the Sphinx. I too am in the camp that the Sphinx is probably one of the best double action autos on the market, if not the best double action auto on the market. I really like the LH9 as well, which is the Lionheart pistol. But when I was considering that or this, I was leaning heavily towards the Sphinx myself. I think it's a good choice.
Right, and just fit and finish it is far beyond realistically anything else that's out there.
It's absolutely crazy how you have steel, aluminum, and polymer. Even the trigger guard on this pistol is polymer, and you can't tell that the finishes are so perfect between the polymer, aluminum, and steel that you can't even tell that they're different materials.
Right, it really lends
really
itself
nicely
well
made.
while you're shooting it. It really mitigates quite a bit of the recoil.
Certainly the weight for carrying.
Yeah, absolutely. So I absolutely love shooting this pistol.
All right, man. Well, thanks for coming out. It's greatly appreciated. And guys, if you have any questions about anything you've seen in this video, of course, you can always ask those questions on our Facebook page. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/military arms. Also, please come by and check out Copper Custom. If you haven't already, I'll put a link down below. It's coppercustom.com. It's an online store. If you want to support the Military Arms channel, it's the best possible way to do that. And again, everybody, thanks for watching, and we will talk to you guys soon.